Good evening, everybody. Sorry we were a little bit late, but here we go again. Another episode of Into the Rift, sponsored by Paravine. I am Thomas Watts, your host, and I have a panel of three people that will discuss League. Today, what's trending in League? Mostly the 2014 World Championship. Surprise, surprise. But let me introduce my panel before we get into that. All three of these writers are from Paravine, and their Twitters are below, so give them a follow, yell at them. You know, when Camille says something ridiculous, just go tweet at him. It'll be great. But anyway, Camille Mai, Dave Troop, and Chase Wassenaar. All three writers, all great guys, all have their varying expertise, and they are now going to be quizzed by me. It's going to be like a quiz show, sort of, not really. But anyway, guys, like I said, we're going to talk a lot of group stage. Group stage into Group A and B over the weekend, and C and D's coming. Let's get right into it. Let's go Group A. Group A, games you mentioned you wanted to talk to me about were AHQ's win over EDG, and then the tiebreaker game shortly thereafter. So, Chase, I know you're a GPL guy. Camille, I know you're a GPL guy. But, Chase, you're the new guy on this show. So, what did you think with the AHQ win over EDG?
Well, first of all, it was the first time in my career, I guess predicting career in League of Legends, where I actually got something right. If you look back at the VOD for episode 2 of this podcast, I said that on a good day, if Westor got rolling and everything went well in the bot lane, AHQ could take a game off of EDG, and it happened. And that makes me very excited, mostly because I really believed in this region. It's a region that I followed for a long time, and it was nice to see both that region accomplish something, get the home crowd excited. It was nice to see the fans in Taiwan have a team that they could really get excited about after TPA just completely fell from the face of the earth. And it was awesome to see Westor do his thing. He's a player who's been legendary in solo queue in pretty much every region. He's been a mid laner who's proven himself on multiple champions. And it was just awesome to see what he could do in one of those hard carry situations where everything's on the line. And he needed to single-handedly bring that team to victory. It was an incredible game to watch. And, obviously the tiebreaker didn't go their way. But the fact that they even had a tiebreaker says a lot about what this team's capable of in the long run, I think.
Absolutely. Camille, before I give it to you, I do want to say, like always, this show is for our viewers, for our fans, so please, I know we have a couple of moderators in chat. If you have a question for any of us, feel free to ask it there. It will get passed to me, but we are changing the format of the show a little bit. We're just going to have a big Q&A session after we're done matriculating through the various world storylines that we've planned to talk about. But anyway, back to the discussion. Camille, what did you think with the AHQ EDG situation? I know you're a GPL guy.
Yeah, I'd definitely love to see AHQ actually take a game of the first seed from China. That's something not many teams can brag about. And yeah, Westor was great, but I also think Green Tea played an amazing game. The whole game turned around with just one hook on Name, and it was so fun to see that. Obviously, EDG tried something different. The composition was slightly maybe not odd, but unusual for the Chinese team. And they had the lead throughout the entire game. And they even had the lead, I think 5k lead when they lost. They were still ahead, but didn't matter anyway. So I think HQ overall played pretty well. Westor obviously and Green Tea were the stars of the team. And I'm just hoping that the next split, at least, or maybe the whole next season, people, and especially the HQ organization, will see that there is enough potential to actually invest a bit in the team, maybe get a proper coach, because I know they have some little helpers, or whatever you call them, but not really a proper set of coaches, analysts, and so on. So I really want this team to grow. I want this team to change one or two players because, well, let's be honest, some of the players could have played better. Naz was okay-ish, but I'm definitely, this game alone should prove that GPL is not as far behind as people think, and it might be actually worth investing in a team from this region. So that's me.
No. To your investment point, you've secured more funds. How do you make the team better? Do you replace players, or do you just surround them with infrastructure? This is the world is your oyster. What would you do?
Both. Well,
Okay.
ideally, I would just get wins because yeah, that's not gonna happen. We all know that's not gonna happen. But if they get wins for some, I don't know what reason, wins get flamed by his teammates or something. I don't know. I don't care. I want wins on HQ. That would be so great. I think Pride's had ups and downs, but overall he played okay. He played decent. Wester obviously is amazing. Garnet Devil is not worth changing. He could be changed for BB or maybe some Chinese hyper carry that's not discovered yet. But that's a risk, and I think Garnet Devil is a solid player. And it should be enough to change Nast to a proper jungler to just snowball Wester and their bot lane out of control in every game, even against better teams, the Chinese teams, maybe even the Korean teams in the future.
Oh wow! Shots fired. Southeast Asia takes
Not
down
the top Korean teams, just the lower Korean teams. Let's be real.
Okay. At least you
big
clarified. At least you clarified. I don't know. For me, building on that one point that you made, I think there's a real shot at like an actual Taiwanese like super team. I think like if you put BB and Wins on a team with Green Tea and Westor, I think that would be a really like Pride's played good enough in the top lane. Like I think that would be a pretty scary team. Like just based on what I saw, I liked all their performances. But I have to be the bad guy here. I mean, I'm sorry, but I didn't think that game was close. I think what happened, if you want my analysis of the game, EDG got up, what was it, 10K, 12K or something like that? And then they're like, and then Name's like, hey, everyone's saying I'm not that good. And everyone's all up in this Imp guy's like face. Everyone's like, oh, Imp is so good. So now I'm going to do this. And they tried to style on AHQ the same way Samsung White styled on AHQ. And what I think this game showed more than anything is that EDG is not a Korean team. They're good, but they're not a Korean team. They can get that 10K lead, but then it's like, okay, now guys, finish the game. Because what they did instead was, hey, we're just going to style. And then when the game got to that crucial point where one mistake for either team wins the game, it doesn't matter that you're 5K in the lead, they were not perfect, which is that's the reason Samsung White can get away with that, because they can mess up. Like in that first game against EDG, they kind of threw the game, but then when it mattered, they fought perfectly and took the game back and won the game. EDG failed to do that. So I don't think it was as much as AHQ being this amazing team, as much as them being able to hold on for dear life off the back of Westor and Green Tea, and then making that one catch onto Name at the end of the game, and then that being the game. I think he was just trying to react to the fact that he's being criticized. From what I understand of him, he's a very prideful, proud guy. So he probably doesn't like the fact that Imp is being called better than him based off this group stage where Imp is going crazy, and even though he's doing a lot of damage, he's not being given as much credit. So yeah, that would be my view on it. I as much as I want to be like, oh yeah, Cinderella's so good, I don't think so.
Well,
See,
go ahead, Chase. I'm sorry.
I'd be inclined to agree with you if it was just one catch, but it was a couple catches. It was a couple fights where Green Tea just had the perfect hook, Westor had the perfect initiation, and they got the kills they needed to get to switch the fight around. If it had, it wasn't just that one pull. That was the one that started the momentum, but they did it a couple times. And I think what you really saw is an AHQ that was playing out of their heads. I mean, that was the perfect Green Tea game. He got every hook that he wanted. Every initiation he wanted, he found a way to land it. Every time Westor needed to get the AD carry down, he did it. Every single time. Now, if you're going to execute that kind of pick comp, you have to do it perfectly. And up until that point, that huge lead we see is because EDG played the objective game perfectly. They had a team fight team that could roam around and get whatever objective they wanted. And as long as they, didn't make mistakes and AHQ wasn't perfect, it didn't matter. And what we saw was the one time out of the 10 or however many times that game would be played in alternate universes where AHQ just did everything right and EDG made a couple positioning mistakes. It was not huge mistakes, usually not punishable mistakes, but the little mistakes that you make in every game. Every team, no one's perfect ever unless you're a Korean team. Those are the only teams. If you're Samsung White, maybe you're perfect. Maybe you can make the case then that just nothing ever goes wrong. But in every other case, it's about figuring out the little weaknesses you have and the little weaknesses your opponent has and making the most of each. And AHQ just exploited those tiny little things so perfectly that they were able to do it not once, not twice, but a few times on path to finally pushing that base down. And I think that's what makes it a little bit more of AHQ earned that victory, even if it's not one that I believe they can earn multiple times. I don't think they're a team that could look at EDG as an equal, but I think they're a team that on that day, in that match, they earned that victory. I don't think it was an EDG throw as much as West.
From 20 minutes on, I'll give you that. From 20 minutes on, I'll definitely give you that. And Green Tea played out of his mind. I'll give you that one too. He had a really good game. Like, he really, really impressed me this tournament. Him more so than anybody, I think, because I'd heard Westward, there was already some hype around him, but I hadn't heard too much about Green Tea being like this godly support. And he really, I mean, maybe it was only on Thresh. Nobody really banned that away from him, but he still played incredibly well.
Well, we kind of beat around this topic, and I'm just going to straight up ask, considering that Samsung White not only won every game, but absolutely obliterated every game, and they did, to my surprise, they didn't style as much as I thought they would. Background for viewers that are not familiar with the OGN, Samsung White has a tendency to style if they don't respect you, and they didn't do that this tournament. So given the way they're playing, Dave, has Samsung White, obviously their name was already in the conversation for favorites, have they proven that Korea is far beyond anything else, and follow up to that, do they have to be the favorites coming out of this tournament, assuming Blue doesn't just blow the doors off of Group C to a similar level?
Well, I think White really had something to prove, probably more so than anybody else, because the amount of crap they got in Korea last year after that showing, I mean, they were not supposed to lose in groups. It was not supposed to happen. And like you mentioned, they're a team that likes to style on people, and they did that last year. They tried to do that. They didn't respect their opponents, and they paid the ultimate price for it and not even getting out of groups. So I think they, more than anybody, were not going to take group stage lightly this time because they have firsthand experience with that happening. That being said, I don't think that you can easily make them the favorites of the tournament. I'm standing by my prediction that, I mean, unless Blue plays terribly and barely squeaks out, like, I think if Blue plays just as well, you have to give Blue the advantage. They've been the kryptonite the whole time. And yes, Korea really is that far ahead. I mean, it sucks to say, but TSM doesn't have a chance. Like, when you watch White play, the amount of I mean, one of the only real things that stood out to me from all 6 games was Ponzillion being a little bit subpar and Imp going a little bit too ham in that first game. But other than that, I mean, that team looked robotic at times. If it wasn't for that stupid smile on Imp's face half the time when he's killing people, you'd think he was a robot. I mean, you really would. The guy, they're scary. I really do feel bad for anybody who has to play them. I don't think anybody can beat a Samsung team but a Samsung team. Not at this tournament, anyway.
It's fair. Do either of you disagree with that? Do you have something to add, Camille? Chase, jump in if you do. I'm judging by their silence.
I guess the only thing I would add is when I was looking at Group A and Group B, I had 2 questions in my mind. The first one was, how big is the gap between Korea and China? And the second question was, how big is the gap between China and everyone else? I think what we learned from seeing how White played against EDG, the gap between Korea and China is massive. The gap between Korea and everybody, it's just an entirely new level of play. The way they just were methodically going through every motion. It didn't even seem like they had to struggle for any of it. I mean, it just all came very naturally to them, and it was like this unstoppable machine just plowing through your opponent. And as far as the second one goes, I think what we learned from, the fact that AHQ was able to take a game from EDG, the fact that TSM was able to take a game from Starhorn Royal Club, is that the gap between China and the rest of the world might not be as large as we thought. I think it's still there. I think Starhorn Royal Club did a great job. They took the beginning of the top spot in that group stage, and I think they definitely earned that. But TSM was able to hold tight with them, and I don't think Starhorn Royal Club blew anyone out of the water, certainly not to the kind of degree that you see White blew away their competition. So I think that's kind of the way I see the world right now. You've got Korea, and you've got everybody else. And sure, maybe the best of China right now is better than most of the best from those other regions, but I don't think that gap is anywhere near as huge as the gap between Korea and the rest of the world.
So now here's the obvious follow-up to that statement, Chase. Mm-hmm. TSM swept out of the tournament by White. Lock it in. Stone Cold Chase lock.
I will lock that in. If TSM grabs a game they should go home and just have the biggest house party in the state of California. Just
That's
invite
awesome.
everybody, have a massive blowout, and just be like, you know what, guys? We won a game against Samsung White. Nobody believed we could. We probably shouldn't have. God knows how they would pull it off, because the way that White is just could beat them across the board. The team plays are just so strong. But if they found a way to do it, they should be ecstatic, and all those players should deserve bonuses, and Reggie and Loco can laugh their way and say, you know what, we took a game off the Koreans when no one said we could. And that would be their best case scenario if they can get 1. 3 is not happening. It's not. There's no alternate universe.
I think that's pretty much universally thought of. We're going to move to Group B, talk a little more Group B, but again, I'm going to say it, every 10, 15 minutes in the back of my head. If you have a question for us, feel free to submit it through chat. We're trying to build our Q&A session, and it's a chance for you, the viewer, to get your voices heard on our show. We would really appreciate it, and just let us know. But anyway, moving on into Group B. Chase already locked in TSM lucky dogs to take anything off Samsung White. But let's talk about some of the games in there. The game that Chase brought up, Camille, I'm going to give this one to you because we kind of subsumed you with the Samsung White hype. The TSM winning a game off of Starhorn Royal Club. What did you see there? Was it Starhorn took it lightly, or TSM just outfought a Chinese team, which is kind of a scary prospect if you think about that? What did you think about that game?
I don't think they took it lightly. I think they may not respect the TSM team as much as the Koreans, obviously, but they took it seriously and they played to a certain point really well. There was one fight at the Dragon where they saw White Turtle totally in a different place. He was just farming bottom lane, and they decided to do the Dragon and then initiate. But the difference between TSM team fighting and the Royal Club team fighting is that I still don't believe Insec is actually communicating with the team properly. On many occasions, he just jumped in and had no follow-up, or just get himself blown up for no reason. And that was one of those cases. The equalizer from Darius perfectly just split a Royal Club team in half pretty much. And yeah, even when White Turtle couldn't really join the team fight on time, he just then came around, cleaned it up pretty much. So from this on, there were a couple messy fights where they had wrong targeting. They initiated on Dyrus, which is fine, but when you're a Rumble, you use the ulti, use some skills, and you're fine. If the ulti is fine, you can die happily. You did your job. But they never really targeted White Turtle, and he was just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And then all those cleanups led to a point where they couldn't do anything anymore. And I don't think that's necessarily TSM playing out of their minds. I definitely think the first team fight that led to this lead was a bit lucky for TSM, because I don't believe White Turtle is this kind of a genius that he decided not to join his team to team fight, but just, I'll be a minute later and just to clean up. That wasn't a conscious decision. That was a bit of a misplay that worked in TSM's favor, which was lucky, but fair enough, they won. And I think TSM definitely needs to play the Rumble. They might get one game from White, maybe. By the way, White also played Rumble, so that's also not fun for Dyrus. I'm not really convinced. I'm saying they can win one game out of White, but I'm really not convinced. Royal Club is definitely not on the level of White, obviously, so I don't think you can say that TSM won against a Chinese team, so they have a chance against Korean teams. That's totally
It sounds like, judging by the facial expressions of your two fellow panelists, that's a pretty much locked-in agreement there.
Yeah.
So.
Dave and I had some synchronized head shaking going on, which is
it was
glorious.
just not happening. But for me, that game was actually, I don't think it was TSM playing out of their minds as much as it was actually, in my opinion, one of the best examples of TSM using their strengths and understanding how to win a game. So if you break it down, Insec, I still don't think he's that good right now. He's not been impressing me. Seems to be over the hump. Amazing played quite well that game. Secondly, Tom, you made a point about them out fighting a Chinese team, which is scary. And it is scary, but it's also not scary because of how TSM did it. And the way that I see it is that TSM was strategically planning these fights. Like, okay, we want to contest Dragon. We want to use the Rumble to fight for the Dragon fight. And then Starhorn was reacting to the fights. So even though TSM was out team fighting them, it wasn't like the traditional sometimes Chinese chaotic style where it's just like, oh, okay, this is just a random team fight that happened and now it's just whoever's better at team fighting wins. It was almost like TSM planned the team fight, and it's like anything. When you're the one planning it, you have the advantage going in, right? If I'm setting the trap, you might be better than me, but if I'm kind of expecting it, then I might be able to win anyway. And I think that's what it was a really good example of TSM doing. I agree with Camille. I don't think they played out of their mind. I think that was, as Chase said, a pretty good indicator that I might have been wrong in how far ahead I put China. Then TSM looked very strong there. I mean, they used their strengths to their advantages. They used their strategical sense and amazing jungling to kind of help them overtake the game when Insec has not been playing so well. And then, let's face it, TSM is a very strong team fighting team. They're probably one of the best in North America. They have very strong players, right? So when you think about it, it makes sense that that's kind of the path they took. The problem is that White will still win those fights, and so will Blue. So it's
damned if you do, damned if you don't, I guess.
Basically.
I just want to add on this point that, yeah, they're good at team fighting, but they need to play those comps. Every comp, Dyrus played a Maokai or something tanky that has to go in, that didn't work too well. It's the same problem as Insec in Royal Club. They may even communicate, but they're not on the same page for each initiation. So they need to play those. Let's kite back a bit and then just re-initiate or re-engage and then win the team fight. They need to play those comps. So Lulu or Ramble top is a must. Definitely a must.
I agree. He's much better on those champions. When he plays Maokai, he just died. Like, there was one or two times where he just died for literally no reason. Like, the cameraman was like, oh, he just died in this team fight. What? Like, it didn't even catch it, you know? It's like, but on his Lulu, he's very impressive, and same thing with his Rumble. I don't think he's going to get Rumble, to be honest. I think White will either pick or ban Rumble against him, just because if I'm White, I identified that as one of the strong things, and I mean, not that White needs to cross their T's and everything and dot their I's, but I think it's a good habit when you're in the World Championship to take every game seriously, so I wouldn't be surprised if White does take it seriously and really tries to 3-0 them. That's why I don't think TSM will get a game. I think White's going to come out and really, really play. It's not going to be a series they take lightly.
That's fair. Chase, go ahead.
I was going to say, the only way I could see Rumble getting through is if White just wants to send a message with game one and just bait TSM into picking the comps that they always love how to play. Give them Amazing, give them, Syndra and Rumble and whatever else, and then just crush them anyway, just to get that kind of punch in the first game to set the tone. Other than that, we're not seeing Rumble again. Dyrus has proved that he's more than capable on that champion. You guys were talking a little bit about TSM as a team fighting team. That's never really been the identity I've associated them with. I've always thought of them more for their laners. They've got really strong laners. And if you look at how this broke down, Bjergsen has over 100 more CS than Korn did by the end of that game. Dyrus was beating up Kola the entire game. I mean, anytime he wanted to fight Kola one-on-one, he was just crushing him. And Kola couldn't get any sort of real pressure on the map. You were getting nothing from that Ryze. And even when they were able to get a rune prison down, he was so far behind that it really struggled to influence the game, I think, in a truly impactful way. It says a lot about, where this team is right now, that, they were able to get the fights that they wanted at those times. I think it's shown a growth that they've had through the NALCS playoffs. I think it showed that they were able to build on what they had. And maybe a little bit, I thought before the group stage happened that maybe TSM had just played out of their minds, during the playoffs, and that maybe they'd come back down to earth. And what we saw here is that they really were able to build on those things. They definitely learned some lessons from those playoffs, and they approached every game with with that kind of attitude, and they were able to do something pretty great. I think, honestly, if it wasn't for just how easily they were able to pick on that top lane, this could have been a very different game. I think the mid lane difference was also pretty huge in this one. And I think that might be something where if you're looking to see how Royal Club does against EDG, I'm going to be curious to see whether EDG can really take advantage of some of that top lane, mid lane, where they're okay, but not necessarily to the same level that we think of some of the other Chinese laners. Whereas right now you look at Uzi, and even in a game with a 5-0-7 Tristana, he was able to end the game with more gold than Wild Turtle. That's amazing. Like, that says so much about where Uzi is right now. and what Zero's been able to, that synergy that they have in the bot lane. And I think that if you're, looking at what Royal Club's going to face in the future, that's going to be a hard lane for EDG to just power through in. And even with Name, who's a very good AD carry, despite what a lot of uninformed Reddit people sometimes will throw out there because he didn't have the same flashy kind of montages that other AD carries have. I don't know. I think right now, if you're EDG, the way you're going to do it is by, drawing Insec away from champions like Rengar, where he can make the initiations for himself that we saw him do so well with, and kind of, focus those solo lanes. Make them beat you. Make Korn and Cola beat you. Because if Korn and Cola are the ones that beat you, okay, you were not going to win that series anyway.
Well, I think that's fair. But the other game that I know we wanted to talk about was one of the return of Svenskeren games, and it was actually the game that quite frankly, might have doomed TSM, because SK was able to beat TSM, which frankly relegated them to getting their butts whipped by Samsung White. So Dave, this one's for you. What did you get coming out of that game? What did you see? And the question, the real softball, the kernel that I want to get to, does SK make it out of this group if Svenskeren is not an insensitive moron? Do they do that? Dave, what do you think?
Well, about the game versus TSM, I think it's League's a really emotional game, right? Like it's a game that's it's fine motor skills, and those are easily affected by your adrenaline, things like that. I think when you watch the celebration that TSM had after the Starhorn Royal Club game, I think it's pretty clear that no matter what they say, I don't think they were taking SK as seriously as they should have been. I mean, maybe they were, maybe they really did, but the way I feel is that they thought they were into the tiebreaker once they beat, you know what I mean? Like they were looking past the SK game. And I think at Worlds, if Samsung White proved this to us when they were Ozone last year, and I think it's going to happen it'll probably happen again in this tournament. All the teams, maybe besides there's a couple probably, the wild card teams, but other than that, if you disrespect any team at this tournament, they are good enough to make you pay for it. No team here is garbage. There's not one team here that is like, oh, that team just sucks. They're just not good at this game at all. No, most of these teams will stomp everybody. So does SK make it out without Svenskeren, though? Yeah, maybe. I mean, it kind of sucks to say. There's that thread that's like, oh, SK might be the most hated team in the world right now. And it's kind of true. They might be, because the SK in those last two games looked like an entirely different team, and much more reminiscent of the team that like almost beat Alliance and was really good in those playoffs. So I don't know. It's a very possible question. I just think TSM looked past them.
Camille, do you agree, disagree? Where do you think SK is getting out or not?
With Svenskeren, for all those games earlier, it would depend really on Candy Panda, because I think the big disappointment wasn't, at least for me, wasn't the Svenskeren, because it happened, he couldn't play, whatever. But Candy Panda had the opportunity to actually carry some of those games, and he didn't. He played really safe. He backed out of team fights with half HP, where he could maybe win some of those team fights or make them more equal at least. And only at the last game when he played Vayne, he just grew some balls, like really big balls, played amazingly, just 1v1 anyone. That was what they needed from the start. They didn't have it. So if Svenskeren was for the first 3 games and Candy Panda played like he played on Vayne, then yeah, sure, there is a possibility that SK is going through the group phase. But otherwise, even if Sven was there, with Candy Panda playing as badly as he did for the previous games, I just don't see them winning any games.
That could be attributed to him tilting, right? That could be attributed to Candy Panda already being down because he knows he has Gilius instead of Svenskeren.
Let's go to C and D. Let's actually talk about Group C first. What do you see in this group? I think it's a pretty wide open thing. And can you cast what you saw from the first 2 groups onto this, or is this brand new group, Wild Wild West? What do you see here?
I mean, I feel a little bit more validated in the picks that I made way back when I was on in episode 2, when I had Fnatic making it out of this group stage. I don't think the gap between China and Europe is as big as we all thought it was. And I really believe this Fnatic team has a ton of experience. They've been here before. We've seen, EDG really struggled with, with all the behind the scenes issues that we'd heard about. It really came to the forefront when they were in a group stage. The fact that they, went 3-3 is not the kind of, and again, 2 of those losses were, understandable. But in a world in which China is so far ahead of the rest of the world that it doesn't matter, EDG doesn't lose to AHQ. EDG looks a lot more dominant in their victories than they did. I mean, they didn't blow out Dark Passage. I mean, AHQ had a more dominant performance against Dark Passage than EDG did. So at the end of the day, I don't know. I believe that there's a chance that we see the OMG that we saw at All-Stars that just looks really strong and does their team fights and kind of bullies Fnatic off of their stuff. But I think that Fnatic has a really good shot if they play the games that they know how to play, if they let Xpeke do his thing, they let Reckles carry from the bot lane. I think this is a team that could really surprise some people and find their way out of it. I think Blue obviously wins. I haven't said anything about them, but I assume that everyone knows that Blue is winning this group. I don't think that's up for debate.
I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah. And then with LMQ, I feel like LMQ certainly has the potential to be an SK type of, team that breaks a team that thought they were going to get a tiebreaker that now doesn't, or a team that, upsets somebody and kind of forces them to reevaluate some things. They have a lot of talent on that roster. I just think they need a little bit more time with, more professional experience.
So LMQ is going to be. You think LMQ will be the spoiler in this group?
I think they are going to win a game that no one predicts them to win, that no one expects them to win. I think it's going to be somewhere either late day 3 or early day 4. I haven't seen the schedule, so I don't know when that 5th game is. But whoever they're playing in the 5th game, which is well, no, it's Blue. Okay, so maybe the 4th game. Maybe it's either maybe it'll be Fnatic or maybe it'll be. This is why you look at the schedule first before you say things like that. But maybe it's Fnatic in that 4th game. Maybe after Fnatic's really high after 2 games. After 2 days of games, and everyone's writing off LMQ as maybe they can't hang. And then they pull out some blitzkrieg, Zhao hard carries from the mid lane and just takes everyone by surprise. I could see that. I can't see them getting out of this group.
I have OMG going through, so that's my thing. But Camille, what do you see here? Do you does the transitive property apply? Does Group A, Group B, kind of giving us a better picture of regions, do very much for you? Or are you gonna stick with your? I believe you had OMG going through second. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
Yeah, I had OMG going through second, and who's going out first.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think the big story is the first and the last game of Group C, and the first and the last game in the schedule anyway, which is OMG versus LMQ. And I think that those 2 games will be the most entertaining ones, because the first game might show us how strong actually OMG is, because people, obviously, the Chinese fans will tell you that OMG is really good. They have some of the stars like Cool and awesome laners, just stomping anyone from the laning phase, then a bit shaky maybe, but they're awesome. If they, for some reason, lose to LMQ on the first day, in their first game, I think the team is going to crumble, and I think they're going to go down really hard. They need to win the first game. Then, yeah, I think they can take games from Fnatic, maybe both. I think, sure, Fnatic did really well in tournaments so far. They're really good when they are playing under pressure. And they may as well go out. But I think, I would probably go with the Chinese powerhouse to go second. Just because I think if they win the first game, they're gonna continue the winning trend.
Oh, there you go. Dave, do you agree, disagree? I realize we're kind of just rehashing what we had a couple of episodes ago, but I'm giving, if you want to change your predictions, given what we saw the first week, here's your chance.
No, for me, I didn't really get to comment when we did. I wasn't on the complete Worlds preview show, so I never really gave my predictions for these on air or anything. I think it's OMG and Blue. For me, Fnatic didn't look that strong in the European playoffs. And they looked really bad at All-Stars. I know that's not like a big thing or anything, but there's something about that team that almost makes me wonder if they care anymore. Like, if they really play well, then I'll eat my words. But there's almost, I don't know, like Peke had that documentary where he said he's kind of not feeling League anymore. He was getting boring for him. I just don't know how much gas that team has left in the tank. If you look at it, they've been around since season 1. Some of those players have been playing in the season. Like, there's not many of those guys left in the scene, right? So I don't know how much Fnatic has left in the tank. I'd like to see them win some games. I'd love to see LMQ win some games. I don't necessarily know if it's going to happen. I don't think anybody's going to beat Blue. I think that's just going to be the same thing as White, another 6-roll steamroll. I mean, I think Chase articulated everything pretty well. The only thing that I think is that OMG, I relegate most of my Chinese knowledge to Kelsey and Frostgaren because they watch way more LPL than me. And from what I understand, during the regular season, OMG really was the most consistent, like, strongest looking team. And if you look at just their solo laners, Cool and Going are easily the 2 best solo laners in China. By far. That's not it. So when you're talking about what are the typical things that we give so much credit to the Chinese region for, it's their pure talent, the pure skill of some of these players. Well, the majority of the skill, the jungle in China, none of the junglers are really been that great. Lovelin or Drug or whatever he is now, he's the best one, right? Like Insect and Clearlove have not been playing as well as he has going in. So then you take that, then you take the mid and the top laners are way better on this OMG team. I think this is probably going to be the scariest team from China at Worlds, EDG is not playing like the EDG that they look like in the Chinese regionals and playoffs to me. So I think it's just going to be OMG and Blue.
Well, I think that's fair, guys. Let's do this. Let's go to Group D, and then we do have a couple of questions from chat that we can close the show on. But again, we do have a little bit more time. If you've got a question, something that we missed when we were talking about groups, or something that you saw you want us to talk about more, feel free to drop us a line, give us a question, it'll get passed to me, and we'll deal with it in Q&A, and we will thank you for the opportunity. But anyway, let's go on to Group D, and same question as before. Chase, you had a chance to make picks a couple episodes ago. Given what we've seen, are you standing pat, or are you changing it up?
You know, it's funny. I'm going back and forth on the Alliance Cloud9 thing, and I understand that as a general rule, you should not take anything from a reality TV show and add it into a prediction of anything. Just in general, anything you see on a reality show should not be taken too seriously. But that Machinima show, I mean, I loved everything I saw from Cloud9. They just took care of business. They were professional the entire way through, unless Chipotle was involved. But I mean, you know, Chipotle, everyone can understand that, I think. And the other thing I have a really big problem with, and again, maybe social media is something not to be taken too seriously, but there was a lot of people pointing out how Tabs wasn't playing solo queue. And Wicked's response when asked about this was, oh yeah, he doesn't wake up as early as we do. Since when is that an acceptable excuse? If I don't wake up in time to get my articles done, does that mean that the fact that they're not read is acceptable? Like, how does that work? I don't know any other job in which it's like, oh yeah, he was sleeping. Like, that's not what I want to hear from a team that's about to go into Singapore and participate on a huge stage, and they have to play White Shield twice. And this Cloud9 team is not going to sleep on anybody. I mean, that's just not how, you know, Lemon Nation and Meteos, they're too strategically minded to let any game slip away. I don't like that. I don't like seeing that in a team that I'm supposed to have a lot of faith in. So I actually will switch to have Cloud9 out of that group instead of Alliance. These are not the rumblings that I want to hear before this goes down. And if this team is not on the same page, I mean, you need Tabs to be on point, because it's certainly not going to be Wicked that's carrying you to victory. Shook is good, but he's very... I mean, he's inconsistent.
There's the best reaction of the show.
Shots fired.
I'm sorry, he's not. If Wicked is winning you, I mean, unless he's on Aurelia and he's hard carrying, it doesn't happen. He has one champion who he does really well with. But other than that, he's not on Balls' level, and he's certainly not on Save's level. I don't know. I mean, you need to win that game by having if you're going to beat Cloud9, how are they going to do it? Are they going to do it out of the jungler? Is Shook going to out jungle Meteos twice? Is Froggen going to beat High? Yeah, Froggen can beat High. I can believe in that. But I also think Balls will beat out Balls will beat out Wicked. So then it goes down to the bot lane. And if Tabs is not on point, and there is no evidence to say that he is, why should I not go with Sneaky and Lemon Nation? That's why I'm going with Cloud9.
Well, there you go. Dave, again, what you got for this one? Has Chase swayed you to the Cloud9 side? Were you on Cloud9 side already?
To be honest, here's the thing. I think that Najin Whiteshield is going to win the group easily. And then after that, I am not getting into this NA versus EU. I refuse to step in this minefield. I've stepped in enough in the past few shows. For me, honestly, it's just going to be whatever team wants it more. I think they're both very, very similar style teams where they depend heavily on their mid laner for shot calling. And they're really good teams. Both of them are very strategically sound. They're made up of very good players, and it's just going to be whatever team actually decides they want to win this world championship. Because, like I've said a few times before, I think that League's just too emotional of a game, and these two teams, it's especially because I haven't seen these guys play each other. I really can't make a comparison between the two teams. It's way too wishy-washy in my mind. It's really an any given Sunday sort of situation. What I think really is kind of interesting, though, is that no one will put Najin, even though if you talked a week before the Korean regionals, Najin wouldn't have even been predicted by anybody to be at Worlds. But yet here they are, and now nobody's going to predict them to lose a game probably in this group. To me, it's almost like, I don't know, have you guys read the book The Outliers?
Yes.
I think it's like the example they use where if you're really good at something early, then you're always training against the top people. If you play rep hockey or something, then you're always playing against the rep hockey, and you're playing more because you're playing rep, so you're playing more than the house league kid. So as the years go by, you get better, and that gap becomes harder to surmount, becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm wondering if that's happening in Korea, where the teams are they had that small advantage on us to start, and now just because they're playing each other and all the regions are region locked, I'm wondering if it's that these Korean teams, because they're only playing, think about it, if you're in Korea, you're playing Samsung White and Samsung Blue every once in a while. You can't suck. If you suck, you're just going to, and all these guys are competitive. They don't want to roll over and die, right? So I'm wondering if that's starting to take an effect to the point that region locking might be actually, because I don't think anybody would have predicted like Najin Whiteshield even be at Worlds 2 weeks before regionals or a week before regionals. And now no one's predicting they lose a game. It's just an interesting phenomenon that I've been thinking about the past few days. It's kind of baffled me.
Well, interesting perspective, Camille. I'm going to throw you a softball here that you can knock out of the park. The one team we haven't mentioned in Group D, and it's probably for good reason because it's an international wildcard team, is Kaboom Esports. Does Kaboom, like LMQ, play spoiler in this group and potentially decide it, or is this just a 3-team fight where everyone's going to smash Kaboom for 2 free wins?
Yeah. Am I supposed to say they're going to be upsetting some teams? Come on.
No, I'm just asking your opinion. I know mine personally. I think Kaboom is going to get just blasted. But, I fully admit I haven't watched a ton of Brazilian League.
First of all, I'm going to say that the Latin American scene is way better than the Turkish scene and all those random smaller wildcard teams that that were playing on the world stage. Previous season, or even, well, I don't know, they weren't even 2 seasons ago, I think. So I think the Brazilian teams actually aren't that bad. Pain during a couple of IEMs took games out of really good teams, and they might be a proper team. But the thing is, they're an okay team, followed by a few other okay Brazilian teams. I don't see them. Even the RCS level is beyond their reach at this point. Maybe the low end of the NALCS is okay, they can compete there. So when you say that Cloud9, or when you ask me if Cloud9 or Alliance or Najin Whiteshield is going to drop a game to the bottom end of the NALCS, yeah, that's just silly. At this point, it's just silly. They're not going to do anything. They're going to just fall on their faces, do nothing. They might as well just come sit at the PC and have a nice conversation on Skype or whatever. Because that's
what we're doing. Record a show while they're playing the game.
Might as well.
Yeah, they should just start streaming on Twitch or something during Worlds. That would be maybe more fun than actually playing against those.
Pick Mordekaiser every game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to happen.
It sucks though, because the Brazilian scene is super passionate. I watched the Brazilian the finals or whatever, and their fans seem crazy. And everything I've heard about that, everything I know, even in MMA, their fans are insane. So I hope for their region's sake that their teams do develop, because that sort of passion is pretty hard to replicate. But I think Camille's completely right. You have to be a little bit. I don't want to call you insane, but yeah, borderline insane if you're going to say Kaboom's going to win a game with a straight face. It's probably not going to happen.
Well, the thing is, they won against Koreans already because the other Brazilian team has the Koreans, so they can say they won against Koreans.
Ah, they can.
So that's
the logical loops and.
But then I guess so can TSM. TSM could say they beat Koreans now because they beat EG. So
yeah, that's
I
not
don't know
gonna
about that logic.
The logical knots that you are tying the show in right now make my head hurt.
But on a serious note, I think before I watched the first two groups, I thought that there has to be one Korean team that flops because that's going to be always the better story when one of the three Korean teams play horribly wrong. But now when I think about it, Shield can actually win Worlds if you both are right that blue is just gonna roll over white, and then the playoffs are put in this way that Shield plays a random or other team. They don't play Korean teams, so Shield can go to the final against either white or blue, and they already won against blue. So that's really scary. If white Shield actually wins everything. I don't know. That would be an awesome story.
I'm fine with that. I would be in spring. The getting that second place finish I thought was really impressive. People are very they'll point out their poor finish in summer, but really they played KT Arrows, who eventually won that league, to 5 games. I don't know what more you want than a 5-game series from the team that eventually won it all. They are a good team and they have great laners and are good at pushing those lanes to their advantage. I don't know if their team fighting's at a level where I could realistically pick them over white or blue. I think they have they're maybe a little stronger in the early game, but not as strong in the mid or late game at this moment. But I would love to see, I'd love to see them grow a little bit. As for Kaboom, here's what I hope for them. I hope that they take a page from AHQ's book when AHQ in their first game against white just went all in on some early game comp and did the big team fight in the jungle. And sure, they got destroyed. It ended horribly and it ended the game before it started. But you know what? You might as well try it. You weren't going to beat them straight up anyway. So at least they're throwing everything at the table. That's what I hope for Kaboom. I hope they go into every game going, okay, we don't have a lot of chance to win. No one expects us to do anything. So let's just throw every single idea we can come up with out there and see if any of it can take someone by surprise. And they have.
We're not going to start our QA, but this actually came at the perfect time that I can fold it into the conversation. Chase, do you think Kaboom could win against AHQ and or TPA?
No.
Why? Because
I think if you're looking at tiers, I think the GPL is just that level above. I think when you're in, a developing league, which South America is right now, you don't have the kind of infrastructure, the coaches, the scrim partners, the everything else. I mean, yes, TPA looked bad in Group B. As someone who picked them to come out of that group, I more than anyone, I'm a fan of TPA. I will openly say that. I was heartbroken to see just how bad they were after day 2. It was terrible. I mean, you can look at my Twitter feed. I wanted to just walk and just never come home. Just walk until it was all over and just never talk about esports again. It was hard because they just gave up and it was terrible. But you know what? That was them on their worst day while heartbroken and whatever else. And even in that situation, they still have years of esports experience scrimming and practicing against some of the best teams in the world. These guys are able to scrim against Chinese teams. They're able to scrim against Korean teams, and they do so on a regular basis. They understand the game and the meta and everything else on a level that developing regions just don't right now because they don't have the experience, because they don't have the infrastructure. Could they get there? Yes. This time next year, I could, this is a different conversation, especially because Garena seems to have stagnated a bit in their development. They're still playing offline for the regular season. I mean, online for the regular season, which is ridiculous that a power region is still doing online tournaments for the majority of their stuff. I mean, that needs to be fixed. But, and maybe if South America can provide some of that infrastructure, then they can take that jump, and this is a different conversation. But right now, no, they're still too young it's not there.
Quick question before we wrap up Group D. So Camille, did you have Cloud9 coming out too, or did you have Alliance?
I had Cloud9. I just don't believe in them.
You guys both have Cloud9. Okay, then just to be a contrarian.
And I'm European, and I'm against.
I know. So
I'm living in the UK.
Just to be a contrarian, then, from my home in Toronto, I will say, I will go Alliance. I will cross the pond, and I will be a traitor. Just to offset the both of you.
I really loved the stutter there. Like, you were so unsure. You're like,
I had to think about it before I said my words. Traitor's a hard word to come out of my mouth, but I guess, screw you, NA. Alliance all the way.
Dave napalming people.
Let's
what
do
he
it.
does. Well, guys, I think we have kind of, I won't say we talked Group D to death, but we do have a couple of questions for Q&A, so let's just shift there and wrap up the show. Now we're officially in Q&A, guys. If you have a question from chat, send it to us. We'll talk about it. We would appreciate it, as always. But anyway, from a couple of people, and okay, I'm going to probably butcher some of these names, so please bear with me. But Grime Boy Baby asks, I got a question. What were the most interesting builds and champion picks you guys being the panel, have seen so far, and do you have any thoughts on what we might see in the other groups? I'll actually take this one, then Camille, I'll pass to you first. I think the biggest thing that we're going to see going forward is more Rumble play. And the reason for that is Rumble does bad things to Maokai in lane. And Maokai is obviously a power pick. On top of that, Samsung Blue's Acorn is considered one of the best pure mechanical Rumble players in the world. And with him re-entering the meta almost surprisingly, I would expect that to be an extreme, not an extreme, but a MG and Fnatic consider banning it. We'll see. I don't know. I think you'll see more Rumble. And in terms of overall builds, I think it's almost a game-by-game thing. You look at the mid lane, because of the fact they're AP assassins. Well, there are AP assassins, excuse me. They're AP mages. They're AD assassins. Every build path, it's where you don't have this common arc. You have so many choices, particularly in the mid lane, and to a lesser extent in the other lanes as well, that what's interesting for me is seeing how these very high-level players choose to build in the specific matchup that they're in. That's what really jumps out at me. But Camille, what have you seen over the first week that's really jumped out at you?
Yeah, I really hope that there will be more Jace play. Definitely, that's what I'm looking forward. I'm not sure who's gonna play it. Maybe Froggen could pick it up. And I just loved how you played it against HQ. Even when they lost, he built Last Whisper into Manamune into the Mercurial Scimitar, which was really awesome to watch because people don't really pick that item too often, apart from maybe Uzi, who goes all offensive items without any chance to if he screws up, he's dead. There's no chance of escaping with that build. So yeah, I think Jace with Scimitar, again, just the poke comp and some defensive abilities to just disengage. That's gonna be what I'm looking forward, because some teams can pull it off, and I hope Alliance is one of them.
Dave, what about you?
For me, there's two things really that stand out in champion picks. The first is that in almost every, the Worlds seem to have a standard for champions in terms of the fact that every Worlds, it seems that some champions come back. Orianna being the first one that you can just think of. Doesn't seem to matter what the meta is. It's just like, oh, you're going to see Orianna as a Worlds. Rumble seems to be another one. Rumble was really big in Season 2. He was pretty big last year during Worlds, and he's back again now. It's like, there's a few of these really team fight centric comps that are almost standing out to me as these are the champions that when you're playing at the very highest level and when you give maximum respect to your opponent, these are the champions you want to take. But the one champion that stands out to me the most is Caitlyn, just because I think she's a really smart Tristana counter pick in the sense that you can really abuse her if you get the 2-on-2 matchup in lane, probably harder than almost any AD, just based off the ridiculous range and poke that you have off in lane with Caitlyn. And then she's also very safe, like Tristana. You can sit back and just deal a ton of damage. We've seen Uzi play her incredibly well. I think now that Uzi's shown you can play Caitlyn still in this meta, I think you're going to see other ADs pick it up and play it, because it's not like Doublelift had that famous quote, right? There are 3 ADs that will never be bad in the game. Caitlyn, Vayne, and Ezreal, because of what they do. Vayne with her true damage, Ezreal with how safe he is, and Caitlyn because of the long-range siege, poke, safety. And I think Caitlyn's just showing that. She's making a resurgence, and funnily enough, actually, we're seeing some Vayne too. And it wouldn't shock me just if we see an Ezreal before the end of the tournament either.
Chase, what about you? What you got? What have you seen? Excuse me.
Can I flip the question around a little bit? Because you guys named all the champions that I would have liked to talk about. As a general rule, I think a lot of the new stuff we saw was, like we saw a lot more Janna than we were used to before this. Everyone kind of saw that coming if you paid attention to solo queue. The movement towards assassins, I was maybe a little bit surprised by how many people were still holding on to like Syndra, for instance. I think I was expecting maybe a little bit more assassin play. I like Syndra and I like what she does, but the way that people have been talking, it's all assassins all the time, and it's going to be just like season 3, and there was definitely a lot more of a mix there. But I would like to talk about something we're never going to see again, and that would be Garnet Devil's Jinx, which I mean,
Oh, no.
Jinx is not in the meta right now. She doesn't have the kind of escapability that you really want when you're talking about someone like Tristana that can jump on you and kind of, push you around wherever he wants. And you're talking about Caitlyn with the long range and whatever. But at the very least, if you're going to build Jinx, maybe boots before 38 minutes. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a professional player, so maybe I'm wrong. But maybe if you have no escapability really in your kit, you might want to consider some boots before 38 minutes. That is something that we probably will never see again.
Thankfully.
Which is my weak way of escaping this question. So yeah.
I understand that. I would be willing to bet that he quite honestly tilted a little bit because EDG did jump all over AHQ in that tiebreaker. We did get one other question, and I'm actually going to take this one and then pass over again. Dave, I'll give this one to you after I answer it. I got the question, why did Rumble stop seeing play? Rumble, as you said, Dave, saw a lot of play in Season 3, and then the only group that I know played him before SK Telecom T1K in the regional tournament this year was a few times in Champions Winter. Again, I am not all-seeing, all-knowing, so it might have happened in the GPL or in China. So, but I can't place it. It's not a very common pick. The reason he saw less play, think about how the meta shifted. With the triple tank meta, that came about for the very specific reason that Doran Shield was ridiculous, as was Perseverance. So you wanted to have these guys, these tanks, that could just stand in lane and not give a damn. Rumble was on that point where he couldn't do that. Yes, you could start him Doran Shield, but you don't really want to take deep defensive tree masteries with Rumble. He's an offensive guy. How do you play Rumble? The thing that makes Rumble great, and one of the reasons it drove me nuts in that AHQ tiebreaker game, was that he has 2 amazing power spikes before 30 minutes. Level 6 and level 11. You get level 6, you go for Dragon. You get level 11, you go for Dragon. If you have half a way decent equalizers, you win the fight. You just win the fight. You're just done. Collect your Dragon change and go. You're out of there. You're done. But so going back to my point about why he stopped play, he didn't take advantage of the broken mastery Perseverance to the point that the three hyper tanks did. So now you evolve forward a little bit. Perseverance gets nerfed. Doran Shield gets nerfed. What comes in? Double AP Wave Clear, which you saw over the past couple of months before Maokai became awesome, as did Alistar. But before that, you still had double AP, but it wasn't double AP Wave Clear. It was like double AP support, where you'd get a lot of Lulu Kayle, or Lulu Kayle and Soraka, where instead of a situation where a team fight would be this quick, just this quick roundhouse, it would be a shield tanking, heal tanking thing. And Rumble, again, doesn't fit in that. Rumble wants to burst with his damage. Well, try and burst down a Lulu Soraka combo. 1, you've completely failed champion select if your opposition gets that. But 2, it's not going to happen. So that's why Rumble fell out of favor. Why is he coming back now? Look at the development of the top lane. You've got Maokai and Alistar, very nasty. You've got an occasional Lulu, you get an occasional Kale, and you get Ryze. Rumble can bully these champions. They can do it. Look, the best example I can give you on this was the Dyrus's game. I think he was on Rumble, and that's what it was. Wins was playing Rengar. Wins went top. Dyrus 2v1'd Prides and wins because he could front load Flame Spitter plus Electro Harpoon plus Scrap Shield into an overheat, and he just blew someone up because Amazing came. That's what Rumble does, and that's why Rumble stopped seeing play because of meta shifts and has now come back. But again, Dave, I know I said I'd give this one to you. I'm kind of giving you the short end of the stick, and I understand that. Did I miss something? Do you disagree with my analysis? What you got for us?
No, I think you gave the perfect skeleton. I just have 1 point to add on to almost every point that you made. So in the tank meta, the thing about tanks is that magic damage by the nature of it, it's not like attack damage where you're an AD carry, you can just auto attack, you can get consistent damage. Rumble has cooldowns, right? So if you can't kill someone in one burst, which you couldn't in that tank meta, you're gonna have a really bad time playing Rumble. So that's why he didn't really exist in that meta. Then when you move forward into the top mages like the Lulu, Soraka, Karma, Kales, he gets destroyed in lane by all those champions. And then plus, again, he has the same problem. Because of the shield nature that Tom mentioned, you can't blow up anybody with him. So again, he's useless. Now he can actually win lane, which is an important thing. Rumble's one of those champions that it doesn't matter if you hit level 6 when the other top laner is level 8 or 9 and already teleported down and got Dragon 3 levels ago. Who cares? So it's now that he can actually win the lane matchup, he's back in favor. And I think, like I just mentioned earlier, I think around Worlds, teams give everybody a whole lot of respect, and they realize that what are the things that it's going to come down to is team play. You're not going to steamroll your opposite laners very often because you're playing the world's best. So when that comes down to it, you want the team play champions. And that's why I think when it comes to Worlds, I wouldn't be surprised if next year at Worlds, no matter what happens to the meta, when it comes back to Worlds, you'll see Orianna, you'll see Rumble, you'll see these champions that provide incredible objective control, very strong team fighting ability.
I do want to add one other thing that why Rumble fell off. His Electro Harpoon took a pretty heavy nerf. So CSing under a tower was a lot harder. I think Jad mentioned that at the start of the EDG Samsung White game. So those things dropped him out, but now, as Dave said, and I also articulated, that there are reasons he's back. But guys, we actually don't have any other questions. So Chase, Camille, do you have anything to add to this Rumble discussion before we close out the show? Chase, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I guess what I would say is I'm glad to have him back. I think right now we're looking at a meta where the top laner can certainly make more of a difference. Not necessarily more of a difference. I'd say the purpose of a top laner has certainly changed with the meta changes. Whether it was a tank or whether it were these utility guys, he was always an assistant to these team fights. It was always the top laner who had to give the rest of his team the ability to win these fights for them, because whether it be soaking up damage or giving the shields or other utilities that you need. Whereas now we're seeing top laners finally able to carry games again. And you're seeing, power laners like Dyrus really benefiting from that. You're kind of, rather than just being these skirmishes in the top lane where nothing really happens because neither one can really kill the other, and, those little outplays don't matter so much. Now we're seeing those outplays really add up, and I think it's going to change the types of teams that you see succeed from this point forward in Worlds. And maybe some of those teams that really benefited from those utility metas, teams that built themselves around that, who don't necessarily focus as much on the laning phase, definitely looking at a champion like Rumble and say, crap, we've got to redo what we wanted, what we were originally planning, because that's just not going to work nowadays. So for one, I welcome it. I like whenever top laners can really make a difference. I got into League because of the whole split pushing top laner, let's let Zion Spartan outplay somebody and do his thing. That was my introduction to competitive League. So I'm always going to be in favor of whatever lets top laners do their thing.
Absolutely. Well, Camille, you don't look like you have very much to say, so you're just smiling quite happily, even though it's 3 in the morning there. I'm going to go ahead and close the show. Oh, 4. Oh, it's 4 in the morning.
3 for me. So.
Golly, I feel old. I cannot do that, guys. But anyway, let's go on and close out the show. Camille, since I I didn't give you much of a chance to talk on this last. I'll give you the first shot. Shout outs. Your closing remarks. Go ahead.
Definitely shout outs to people who actually provide us with questions, which are always great to see, because that's why we're doing the show for the fans. So.
Hold on, we did just get a question that it literally just showed up in chat as I was passing off to you. I'm having a great time cutting you off 24/7, Camille. I promise. But here's one from a Korean guy. It was pointed out in cast that especially Starhorn Royal Club prioritized Ryze in a bunch of their games. Yet Cola wasn't ever a Ryze player, and you could see it in their games, especially in the TSM SHRC game. Want to ask if anyone might know if China, or Starhorn Royal Club in particular, prioritized Ryze. And
well, they were prioritizing it because they were taking it early, but why? I mean, the only reason you could think why is because Korea takes it, right? And
well, Ryze is awesome. He's a scaling.
He's a really strong pick. He's a really strong pick, but I don't know.
I mean, the Rune Prism just get. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
This is one of those situations where a champion gets so hyped up. I'm not arguing he's an amazing champion, but he gets the status of either you pick it or you lose the game. This mentality of no matter if you play it or you don't, you have to pick it. And I don't think necessarily that was the correct way. There are many teams that actually fall into this trap of just picking the supposedly OP champions and then not performing well on them, or even not even, in some cases, not even understanding exactly why they are so OP. So I'm not sure if it worked. It definitely. What? No.
I'll do it if no one else does. Sorry, guys. We have a back chat, and I was trying to prompt them, and I got a what? Anyway.
That was weird. Anyway, I'm just saying that those Ryze picks were, I think, prematurely picked, and I think they were wrong, actually. I think if you don't play it, you should ban it. You should just stay away from those OP champions, because it's easily to just lose on those champions. Your picks can backfire just as much as your bad play, so I wouldn't recommend for the Royal Club to pick it again.
I can see that one, and I do want to explain what I was saying in our back chat. I was trying to prompt Camille, and it was my fault, to cite Flame's reflections that Thorin posted a few months ago. One of the major points that Flame made was the concept of comfort versus in meta, and in many cases the comfort winning out. And that's why you might see it. Starhorn Royal Club went for the OP pick. Top laner wasn't comfortable on it. Screwed. Just hosed. I think that would probably be the easiest explanation. But we did get another question. And again, this is our Q&A. Thank you very much for all these questions. And I'm going to give this one to Dave. Dave, I actually don't have the person's name, so I'm just going to read you the question. I got an impression that Koreans do not value First Dragons as much as other regions. Is this because they prefer safety over a few Dragon Gold and pressure in the other lanes, such as top lane?
I think with the First Dragon, especially if you get it early, the advantage, what's the point of getting the First Dragon? The gold really isn't that much, right? Like, you can actually offset the First Dragon gold easily. The advantage is having the timer. I think the thing that the Korean teams, the reason they don't prioritize it so well is because they're so good at knowing when you go for Dragon. They're so good at watching the map movements and saying, this is when they went for Dragon right now. Okay, we have Dragon timer too. And when they take another advantage, gold-wise, everywhere else on the map, they even up the gold and they don't forfeit the actual advantage of that early First Dragon, which is really just the timer. It's not so much the extra 500 gold or 600 gold that your team gets, because you can offset that with a tower and a freeze or something, or a tower and a hard lane push, and resetting the wave on them and making them miss a huge minion wave. Especially if you get a kill or tower dive top, so I think that's probably would be my assumption as to why they don't value that First Dragon as early.
Well, Chase, you were kind of nodding. Do you have anything to add to that question?
Yeah, no, I want to say I definitely agree. I think that early dragon is still not worth quite enough gold to make it such a huge priority for these Korean teams, especially when you consider, they're already thinking about how are they going to get to the mid game? How are they going to get those kind of advantages around the 15-minute mark? And the way you do that, I mean, look, a little bit of global gold is nice, but what you really want to do is get those lane advantages, because if you get a little advantage early on, you can start steamrolling. You get a second kill and a third, and that's a continual source of gold revenue versus Dragon, which is a one and done kind of thing. I think if you're a Korean team, you are more than happy to let your solo laners get fed. And yet, as long as you have a timer on that dragon, I think that, by the second or the third, especially by the third, you really want every dragon you can get because the global gold is so immense. But up until that point, I think they've kind of realized that there's a little bit more utility in just getting those solo laners to a place where they can potentially carry, where they can potentially, drive someone, put someone else in a place where they're not going to have the kind of impact on a team fight that a team would need, and where they can really take a game and kind of take it by storm.
I think that question came from Caleb a Warrior.
Oh,
Caleb. So I went into chat and found his name. I think that's it. So
okay.
shout out to
Caleb.
Shout out to you. Camille, we do have one other question, and I'm going to pass this one to you, just kind of passing around questions to the panel. This is another one from a Grime Boy Baby. Thank you very much, sir. Very much appreciate it. Camille, what do you think about Tristana? Is she overpowered? Is it just a matter of matchups? And how well does Lucian work against her? Some ADCs in the tournament seem to like whoa. that grammar, it hurts me, but that's okay. We appreciate the question. Some ADCs seem to excel on Tristana, such as Wild Turtle, but they don't look good on anything else. Is she OP? What do you think?
That's not necessarily OP as a champion. She's great as a champion. She's definitely better to push towers when you have a somehow dodgy initiation, when you can't push the advantage too far. So you have a Tristana, you can hit a couple shots and then back out. That's great. I think for some teams like TSM, it's not really an OP pick, it's more of a necessity pick, especially for White Turtle. Against Lucian, it depends if you play the really safe ADC style like Daft, like Name, or you play the crazy, I'm gonna get in, I'm gonna get a reset, I'm gonna kill 8 people, whatever. Well, not 8, 5. And just steamroll everyone, like White Turtle or Imp. I don't think there's that many differences between those picks. Obviously, if you play with a big composition or a high burst composition, you definitely go for Lucian, because that's obvious. But overall, it depends. If you play Tristana, you can't play too safe. Candy Panda played too safe on Tristana and they lost the game. On the other hand, Name played quite passive on Lucian and he got way more damage than anyone else. So I think it's more dependent on the ADC than the pick itself. I think that some teams should prioritize Tristana over anything else, and some teams don't need to prioritize. Hard word. Yeah. They don't need to do it, so they can pick Lucian. That's the thing. The Lucian is not a first pick champion for most teams. Maybe Uzi will pick it because it's his favorite champion. But other than that, you don't need to pick Lucian. That's the advantage Lucian has over Tristana. If you are a Tristana player, you can't really leave it too long because other teams can grab it. And if you're a horrible player on Lucian, just horrible, then you have to pick it early. That's the only thing. So I think Tristana is not OP. She has loads of disadvantages in the back pick and ban phase. And I think overall Lucian is a bit stronger. And all the ADCs should learn to play Lucian more than Tristana.
That's fair. Dave, you seem like you might disagree here. What you got on this one?
Yeah, I really think to be honest, I think she's really, really OP right now. I mean, her range late game makes her incredible if you get to late game. Her scaling with her Q is insane. Like, her damage output once you hit max items I don't think it's paralleled by anybody in a team fight. Her mobility makes her an extremely good, gives her extremely good synergy with Kha'Zix, who's a very popular jungler right now, because you can reset and continuously chase kills after in a team fight. She allows you to play very aggressively, and here's the thing about her laning phase. This is why Riot had to nerf the base damages on her AP rate, on her E, and on her ult, because her laning phase, considering there's no skill shots on that champion, I mean, you go auto E auto and you win a trade as long as you don't take a full Lucian Q double shot, QW double shot. As long as you don't take that, as long as you play the trade right, like you win trades pretty easily with that champion. And it's also very easy to, just lane swap and farm up. So I think we're going to see some Tristana nerfs. I would not be surprised. She's a pretty strong champion in my opinion, right?
We've
Let's put
already
it this
seen
way.
Tristana nerfs.
I think we're gonna see. It's one of those champions that I think it's like that. Riot likes to do that, and I don't think it's a bad approach where you kind of nerf in stages because you don't want to over nerf a champion and take a champion from a really strong competitive pick to dump truck it. Like it's better to bring it down in small levels so you can kind of get it to the right. Because I think she's a fun champion. I like seeing her in games, but I think right now she doesn't have a weak enough early game for how ridiculous her late game is.
Chase, do you have anything else to add on this one, or are you good to go?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think she's completely overpowered. Like when people talk about it being an insta-win, this isn't like Kassadin early in Season 4, where if you had him, you really had to devote your entire strategy to shutting him down because of just how useful his mobility was. I mean, if she was that overpowered of a champion, we'd be seeing her banned. And honestly, she has not been banned that often. And I think, what you see is great scaling and a champion that rewards strong, decisive plays. And when you're talking about the best AD carries in the world, you're seeing a lot of people that know how to take advantage of every aggressive move that they can make. Every time they see an opportunity, they know how to take advantage of it. And Tristana does that very well. Now, does that mean she needs to be nerfed? I mean, she's strong. She's very strong. No one's going to deny that. But I think she's at a point right now where, the nerfs, whatever nerfs are coming, should be very small ones because she's already, she's not ban worthy yet. I don't think she's so far above anything else. I think Lucian's at the same stage. I think really, if you're going to talk about nerfing AD carries, you can't nerf Tristana without nerfing Lucian. And honestly, I'd rather see other AD carries brought up. I'd rather see Graves get a little bit more of an identity and see him appear a little bit more. I'd like to, I'd like to increase diversity by making other AD carries better rather than necessarily saying, well, Tristana's good and it's been fun, so let's make sure it's not as fun and not as. Yeah. That's my approach to it. But
no, that's very logical.
Well, okay, guys, we do have one more question, and someone needs to turn off their cell phone or something. But we do have one more question, then I'm going to close out the show. And it comes from, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that name. You know who you are in chat. Thank you very much for your question. Since you're talking about champions, why did Janna come into play in Worlds? It seems she came out of nowhere. Some thoughts. I'm going to answer this one. I personally think the reason that Janna has come back is because of what she does. Like, what she does. Think about her kit specifically. What do you're getting into this tournament where in many cases, you are breaking out of your region's style. Everyone typical Chinese aggression. Well, how do you handle that? What can you do to bulwark against that? What does Janna do? Janna, in lane, the shields make sure you win any trade as long as you trade well, as long as you're not a moron with it. The slow lets you, if you happen to trade well enough to get a catch or something, the slow will help lock down a kill. The tornado is either a kind of awkward engage but a very good disengage tool. And Monsoon. Monsoon is one of those abilities that is enormously flexible. You can use it as an engage tool if you're kind of gutsy with your flash. You can use it as a disengage tool. And you've seen that in both cases. You've seen flash Monsoons throw guys into walls and get them blown up. Or you've seen it like, I believe Mata did, where, Samsung White's sieging. I'm just going to Monsoon and heal people. So you have an enormous amount of kit flexibility, and that doesn't even mention Janna's passive, the passive movement speed buff, which, think about it. You play any kind of chase comp, or any kind of hard engage comp, or any kind of disengage comp, and all three of those things are very popular right now. You play any of those, and your comp gets better because Janna is sitting around your other teammates. She's just had this moment where the meta has shifted slightly, and I kind of feel like people rediscovered her a little bit. So it's not something specific. It's much more Janna is a tool in team's toolkit, and right now she's very good for the job. That's my personal opinion. And because I'm the host, that's the only opinion you get right now. But looking at my three panelists, they're all smiling and nodding, so I think they're in agreement. So we're going to go in and close the show. Camille, I did cut you off once for shout-outs. I will not do it again. So the floor is yours to start taking us out of here.
Yeah, definitely shout-outs to people who asked those questions on chat. So, because we actually do it for other people. And we want to make it as interactive as possible. So the more questions we get, the more questions we can answer. So don't hesitate, don't be shy. Even if you feel the question might be a bit dumb or you just don't know, we're happy to answer anything. So yeah, shout out definitely to our viewers. If there are any from Europe, bigger shout outs to them.
Absolutely. Dave, what you got?
Yeah, just big shout outs to everyone watching. Thanks to Paravine again for doing this. If you like Camille said, the point of this show for the most part is A, just create some more talk show content, and B, for us to help answer questions, stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure I can go for everybody who's on the show right now, saying that if you have any questions and during the middle of the week or during Worlds, feel free to tweet them at us. We're all very active on Twitter. We will answer you. We're not Thorin level yet, where we can ignore all the minions. So we will respond to you happily, and we'll engage in some conversation as long as it's civil and intelligent. But yeah, thanks to everybody for watching, and I'm sorry about the incident with the dog.
Yeah, we're going to get the post-production meeting is going to be real interesting. But don't worry about that, viewers. That's for us to worry about. Chase, why don't you finish out? What you got for shout-outs?
Well, first of all, shout out to Steven because, he wasn't obviously on the panel today. But without him, little do all of you know, there would be no podcast right now.
That's
because
very
we were
true.
having some technical difficulties. He came in on a day where he did not have to be here and saved all of our asses. So thank you, Steven. I appreciate you.
Lord, we'll give him our first Paravine Lord.
Master of Tech Knowledge. Whatever title you want, it is yours. I also want to just shout out, all the people at Paravine who, let us write our stuff and let us be on this show. Definitely follow me on Twitter. I am live tweeting pretty much every day of Worlds, and if I'm not, then I'm tweeting from the VODs later. And as these guys pointed out earlier about my TPA rants, I get very passionate. I love this game, and I'd love to talk to you guys about it. So please do follow up. I appreciate everyone who stayed up to watch this, especially I know I had a couple friends from Europe who said they were going to check me out. So I appreciate it. And final shout out to Andy. I fixed the haircut this time around. I no longer look like an adult who brings Yu-Gi-Oh! Lunchboxes to work every day, which was really all I was hoping for after last time. So I'm very happy. And shout out to my friend Sarah who did my my makeup and hair before I came on today. It was she made sure it's not going to happen again. So thank you for that, Sarah, wherever you are.
That is beautiful.
Well, guys, we did actually. Camille had a little internet problem, so the overlay might have gone a little sideways. So I'm going to get us out of here as soon as we can. I want to shout out to Sam, one of my fellow editors. He has been really key behind the scenes for setting this up, getting this going. So big shout out to him. Shout out to the panelists. I think y'all are great tonight. I want to thank the other guys that work behind the scenes. Andy, he's been moderating for us and working the Paravine Twitter. Steven doing his streaming. As my panelists have said, this is a show for the viewers. So if you have something that you want to see that we can tweak a little on here, give us some feedback about it. We're always looking for it. Obviously, this is just episode number 4, so it's a work in progress. And for those of you that watched episode 3, we did change the Q&A thing based off some feedback, so you can have a hand in helping us plan this show. We are going to try and get on a schedule for every Monday now. If there's some big event, we might host a different time, but we're going to try and stick to Monday. But with a broken overlay, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to wish you all have a great rest of the week. Enjoy Worlds. Give the guys on the panel a follow. Give me a follow. We would love to hear from you. Until then, Have a great rest of the weekend, and see you on the Rift.
Mwah.